I see we have we're calling an audible. Oh, we're going 4 wide. It's happening. It's happening.
Yes, that is right. It is another edition of the 4 Wide Podcast, brought to you by the Film Guy Network. Guys, that is Dan Cowley to my right. Down below me to my left, the left part of the screen is Jonathan Williams and Jeremiah Stoddard. Guys, make sure first off, want to thank you for last week's episode. We had a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed the show as much as we did putting on the show for you. And with that being said, we're going to get right back into it. Before we do that, we got a lot to talk about. Let's take care of some business. Make sure to like and subscribe to the video. Subscribe to the Film Guy Network, especially if you're new here. I know he does a lot of Georgia content here. But hey, we're here covering the NFL for you guys. And hey, we're going to talk a little bit about Georgia today because we got some time to fill before the NFL games come to an end. But with that being said, make sure you follow all of us on Twitter. And especially want to give a special shout out to the 4 Wide's official Twitter Twitter handle. Make sure to follow that page. Keep up to date with everything going on with the 4 Wide Podcasts. All three of these guys do a great job putting out content over there. So make sure you show support on Twitter, social media, about everywhere, guys. Share it with a friend. If they like NFL football, we are here for them. With that being said, let's get right on into the show, guys. Georgia coming off of I don't know if it's the struggle bus or maybe you want to term it differently. But with that being said, they only won 39-22. I know some fan bases would take that in an instant, but it was not expected from Georgia. A 40-plus point favorite coming into this game at home against Kent State. Was this just another edition of those noon kickoff, the drowsy noon kickoffs, or was it something different? Starting in the bottom right corner, Jeremiah Stoddard, I want to hear your take.
So I think a noon kickoff does play into it a little bit, but I'm not going to blame it on that. I think it's one of those things that, I think a team just kind of surprises you a little bit. You get a Kent State that's out there really ready to go, and Georgia, like you said, it is still a noon kickoff, so maybe that does play a slight impact on it. But you have a player that has been extremely solid for you over the last 18 games at Georgia that he's played so far, and I'm talking about Ladd McConkey, and all of a sudden he has a really bad day. And when I say a really bad day, I mean a really bad day. He fumbles on I think it was a catch to the left side, and he fumbled it, and then he muffed the punt, which was also a really detrimental one right there because it gave, after a 3-and-out, your defense gave you, and then he muffs the punt, and then Kent State gets 3 points right after that. So they're able to get momentum against you, even though you stopped them defensively a minute ago. And then all of a sudden you're letting them drive the field on you offensively in the second half as well and get 13-play drives. That's what kind of caught me off guard. At halftime, I even tweeted it out, and I was like, listen, there was a couple big mistakes in the first half. There was two plays that really kind of hurt you in the first half outside, that they did offensively. And so you didn't expect them to necessarily do as much in the second half, but then all of a sudden they're getting a 13-play drive. They're getting a 12-play drive, and then I think a 9-play drive later in that game as well. And so that's the part that was a little concerning to me, was you start letting up those long drives against a team like this. It's one thing if they get a big play on you. I don't like seeing them get those long drives on you because that is a little more concerning than what you want to see.
I think Kent State really surprised me with not only how disciplined they were, but also just how well run of an offense they were, because they threw in a lot of pre-snap motion at Georgia. And I think that kind of contributed to some of their defensive struggles, especially when you throw in the fact that they were without Jalen Carter, that star defensive lineman of theirs. So going into that, on the plus side, you got to get in a lot of new faces. Bear Alexander got some snaps in there. Even Bill Norton was in there. He made a big play for Georgia at one point. So I think but when you take into account the muff punt from Ladd, which gave Kent State excellent field position right off the bat, and then you also take into account just you had 3 turnovers, and the fact that you still won by 17 points and you still handled business, and Georgia came up big with some defensive stops down in their own territory and limited Kent State to field goals. So really, I know when you are a 40-plus point favorite, yeah, you expect them to drag them, and I think it caught Georgia off guard. And it's hard to just flip that switch in the middle of a game. When you yourself expect to beat down someone, it's hard to just flip it on all of a sudden. All right, now it's time to really play. It's time to play an actual ball game right now. We got to take care of some business right now. It's hard to just do that in the middle of a game. So all in all, I think it was a pretty sound. It's a solid win. Look, a win's a win in a sense, and you want to get out of there alive. And aside from red zone struggles, I think the offense pretty much did their job, and defense even showed up a little bit. So I don't know that it was as bad as people originally perceived it.
Well, I think the one thing that you have to realize is Kirby wasn't all that upset. Okay. They won the football game, but he now has ammunition that he didn't have before. These guys have been reading the press clippings a little bit. I mean, it's obvious the way that they prepared. Like I said in the group chat that we have together, once you get into a game like this, there's not a switch that you can flip where you can just go ahead and beat the crap out of them. You're going to be in a game that's going to be a struggle all the way to the end. And at no point did we ever feel like Georgia was going to lose that game. At least I know I didn't. But yeah, it's very frustrating. And then I think also what plays a part in that is that you have a lot of guys playing really early, which interrupts, for a lack of a better term, the chemistry and the rhythm that you have. It's kind of segmented and you never really get going because they were going to play so many guys early. I think just in their mind, they thought that they could just kind of, as they say, roll the ball out there and beat the heck out of somebody. And, I guess they did kind of do that, but you got players, you could tell that some players weren't 100% focused, and that's a struggle. But at the end of the day, a win's a win, and now Kirby has that long-awaited ammunition that he can just fire at these guys all week long. So it's going to be a great week of practice at University of Georgia. I can almost guarantee you that.
You're muted, Harrison. There
Dang. Hate to
There
be
you
mine.
go.
First mess up of the day. Keep track of it, guys. In the comments, if you're in the comments, make sure if there are games going on and something big happens, make sure to let us know so we can interact with it. That way,
I think they wrapped up the first. I think the game's wrapped up. Yeah.
Okay. So before we move on, real quick, I do want to talk about. I want to get your thoughts. I mean, obviously, you had the turnovers. You had a muff punt, a fumble, and an interception for Stetson Bennett. But I mean, really, when you look at the game overall, as these guys were saying, outside of the first 4 drives, maybe 5 or 6, Georgia's defense played fine. And I think it was – you weren't playing very, very good football on either side. The offense setting up Georgia's defense in some very, very bad spots. And Georgia still held those guys to a field goal. They didn't score a touchdown until after the Ladd McConkey fumble. Bad day at the office for him. And pretty much, that the defensive unit, that whole defense as a whole, Kirby Smart said in the press conference the other week that their goal each year is to not give up more than 13 points a game. That's their goal. To me, I don't see them scoring letting much people score.
And I mean, you take a look at the stats. They threw for 198 passing yards, I want to say, and then they had like 93 total rushing yards. That's not a lot of total offense given up, especially when you consider they put up 22 total points. I think a lot of it, again, had to do with where Kent State was at on the field in regards to where they started out. Yeah, field position. And if you listen to the comments made after the game, I know people get on to Kirby and everybody for saying, like, I got a lot of respect for X team. But, Stetson Bennett said it. Samal Mondon, I believe, said it as well. And Kirby Smart said himself, like, Kent State is a good football team. Just because Vegas puts you in at a 42-point favor or whatever, that doesn't exactly correlate with how good someone else might be, especially from our perspective as well, because we don't get to watch film on them every week.
The one thing that we didn't take into account, and everybody should have, is the fact that in this month alone, they have played the University of Washington and Oklahoma. And they were prepared for this football game. They have played guys with the talent that they were going to see against University of Georgia, and they were prepared. They were ready. They were not intimidated. They were ready to play from the opening kickoff. And I think that was a huge swing and a miss by Georgia by overlooking that. And that's just a thought that I had on that.
Yeah, I think that's the case too. I think that's something that they talked about on the broadcast at one point, was like, and then last year they played somebody else that was on the similar caliber as well. And you're going, man, they're not scared to go into Athens. They do this every time. These small schools like this, think about like App State. App State's not scared to go on the road to these teams like Texas A&M because they do it 3-4 times a year every single season. They don't care who you are. They will go out there and they'll punch you in the mouth. And then you just got to make sure you don't overestimate who they are, or underestimate who they are when you're going into that matchup. And that's why I think Georgia didn't underestimate them. But Georgia still had, what was it, like 500 and something yards of total offense in that game as well. Like they were driving the ball and playing very well overall offensively, outside of the errors that you had with the random interception that Stetson Bennett hasn't thrown all season. And then you have, Ladd McConkey turning the ball over twice. Outside of those, the offense was just cruising, and it would have been a very different game.
I think the good thing about Georgia struggling against Kent State is now you had your first bad game of the season, and it came against Kent State. You didn't have to wait until you played Auburn or Tennessee or Florida and Jacksonville to have your first bad game of the season. Now you have that on film. You kind of get a good look at yourself as, what are we struggling with? How can we fix this before you head into your next schedule, which again, it has Missouri, Auburn, and Vanderbilt, I want to say. So again, those are kind of 3 games that aren't your toughest opponents left on the schedule, and it kind of allows you to get back into your groove, kind of reanalyze yourself, and then you get into the heavier parts of your schedule. So I think it's a good thing that your worst game of the year came against Kent State.
Absolutely. And you got Missouri at home next weekend. I think it's around 7:30 kick
It's away.
at night. Oh, away.
Yes.
Sorry.
It's a night
Away
game
at Missouri.
in
It's
Missouri.
going to be fun though. I mean, Georgia hasn't played a night game all year yet. The closest you played the night was that 3:30 or was that 2:30 kick against Oregon. Georgia does show up to play at night, even though it's on the road. I'm not too worried about that atmosphere. It's going to be a good atmosphere either way. I do look forward to seeing how Missouri looks coming out of that heartbreaker with Auburn. So with that being said, we also got a lot of NFL games to talk about because the NFL is king, and all over the world. NFL is king, guys, and that's what you're here for. Here for some info talk. If you want some more, some straight Georgia talk, go check out the Top Dog Talk podcast every Tuesday at 7:30 East Coast time. Also, Classic City Sports podcast. Jeremiah, Jonathan Williams on it every 8 o'clock Wednesday night. You can catch them over there on YouTube. Make sure to follow each of us, all of our pages on YouTube, on Twitter, to keep up when those are coming. Dan, a lot of close games today. Kind of a theme so far through the season.
Yeah, last week we had a bunch of close games. This week, maybe not as compelling as some of the games that we saw last week, but there were 9 games this week that finished under 7 points. And a handful of those games, I believe 5 of those were less than 3 points. So there was a lot of games that came down to the wire. Maybe is not as climactic as the games that we had last week, but there were a lot of close games, and that is what the NFL wanted for their product. Is they wanted every one of these games to be really close. A final score, a final drive, to have opportunities to win these games. And the NFL is putting out that product. Now, I admittedly have been checked out of the NFL the last couple of years, but I am really enjoying being back involved with the NFL this year because I forgot how good these games are. And we've had a couple seasons where there was a team that was just so dominant and nobody else really mattered. But if you watch the NFL right now, you really feel like it's a pretty even league right now. Obviously you have some really good football teams, but then you have these other teams that are extremely competitive. And it seems like, at least early in the season, that anybody can beat anybody any given Sunday. And that's exactly what the NFL wanted. And I think we are getting an opportunity to see that this year. And if we have this type of product all season long, we're going to have so much fun covering this league, guys. So what games, what scenarios, what is really caught? We'll talk about injuries later, but what games really caught your attention today? What were you focused on?
Man, I was just focused on all of it. You had, especially because we have this beautiful, beautiful gift called NFL Red Zone where you just get all the action. You just get to sit back on your couch and you got all the games coming after you. People knocking on the door in the end zone, and you just get to watch all of it. So really, I don't know that I focused on just one game anymore. Maybe when the Falcons play, but other than that, it's just you focus on what's going on in the league, and you get a little taste of everything that's going on, and you just get consumed by the entirety of the NFL. And I think people often forget how close the NFL actually is because I think people kind of think, well, you still have your gaps between the team that's sitting on the top of the league and then your teams that are on the bottom. But there's a reason why sometimes guys like Geno Smith come in and start for the Seahawks, and they look pretty dang good. And people are like, how is a backup quarterback, Geno Smith, who's been kind of run out of the league or run out of a starting spot for years now, and now he's all of a sudden looking like prime, whatever, insert elite quarterback right now. And it's because these guys are all professionals for a reason, and there's really not this huge gap of talent that you get in college as in the NFL. The NFL is a lot closer, and that's why I think you see so many competitive games, whether it's the bottom of the barrel teams facing against one of the top teams or whatever else. There's a lot of parity in the NFL, and it's obvious reasons. They're all professionals.
So with that too, like I was really focused on, like we just saw in the comment section from Zach, is the Falcons game stood out to me. I was watching that, I had that on my laptop, and then I watched Red Zone on my TVs where it was flipping between the different games and everything like that. National TV wise, you only get 1, maybe 2 games at a time that you can watch the actual full game if you're not watching Red Zone or season ticket or something of that nature. Well, I was watching the Falcons game, and it really stood out to me that this is a pretty good team. You still have Drake London, who's performing really well as your first round draft pick this year. He's looking pretty good throughout the season so far. I know it's just 3 games in, but he has been playing pretty well. You got Kyle Pitts, which I think that the Falcons fans pretty much bullied him into getting more catches this week because everyone talked about Arthur Smith not putting him in the game or not putting him in the game plan as much last week. And then all of a sudden you start out the game and he's got like 4 or 5 catches within the first half almost, or at least targets in the first half. And you start looking at it that way. One thing that really stood out to me, and it was a career high for him, Cordell Patterson had 141 yards rushing today. And this guy's in his 30s, is he not? Somebody correct me on that. But like, he's in
31
his
years
30s.
old.
He's 31 years old, and he's out here running for 141 yards in a game like that when you needed him to be able to help ice this game away. And the Falcons came away with a pick late in the game to kind of seal it as well. But then he was running extremely efficiently today. But that was fun to watch. Hopefully the Falcons can turn some stuff around, and maybe they won't have to lose, 14 games this year.
The one games that I could not keep my eye off of was the Bills and the Dolphins. And I know in the group chat you guys said something about the Bills or the Dolphins might be the best football team in the NFL right now. And if we want to talk about that later, absolutely. But I just want to say that game was an amazing game. There's a lot of stuff that happened. We're definitely going to talk on that. That is a game that I was watching. Athletes all over the field. The game was not as high scoring as I thought it would be. And then the other one for me was Kansas City in the Colts, because I am on record saying that I thought that the Colts were going to be a very good football team this year. They started off 1-1 or 0-1-1, never really got going, but Matt Ryan able to lead the Colts down the field for a game-winning drive against the Chiefs. Man, listen, I felt so good about that, because Matt Ryan, he took it on the chin here in Atlanta so many times. He got blamed for everything. Even when he was playing extremely well, nobody wanted to give him credit. I'm extremely happy for him to get that win against the Chiefs, who are a fantastic football game. I don't think you'll find anybody in this group that doesn't think the Chiefs are a fantastic football team. And to go, I think that game was at home, right? That game was at home, right?
It was Colts home game for the Colts.
Yeah, a home game for the Colts. So in front of that new fan base, to give them that win, especially after starting 0-1-1 and not really giving them the win, because I think a lot of people thought they would come out of the gates playing really well. The two games I was really interested in were those two. But for me, that Matt Ryan leading that drive, I was so happy for Matt Ryan, and I enjoyed that thoroughly. And there was a lot of crazy stuff that happened in that ball game. And Patrick Mahomes is definitely elite. And even that little argument with Eric Bieniemy right before the half, he wanted to take a shot, and Bieniemy's like, "Dude, we got to leave. What are you trying to do?" But they cleaned that up. It's just a guy being a competitor. I don't think that was disrespectful in any way. Bieniemy didn't lose his cool. I really like that. And Bieniemy's had such a hard time trying to get a head coaching job. I think that little interaction right there and how much publicity that got, I believe that is going to give Eric Bieniemy a lot more standing in these owners' eyes when they go to for these new head coaching jobs, because I was really impressed with that, because Patrick Mahomes was about to get hot on him, and he stayed cool, and he's like, "Hey, buddy, listen, we're going to go to the locker room, and we'll be okay. We'll be okay."
Yeah, and I'll say too, with Matt Ryan, talking about him having a that game-winning drive today was nice to see as well, because he had 3 interceptions, only had 195 yards last week in that loss, and so it was a pretty rough game for him on there, and so you kind of felt bad as, once again, we all have that Falcons fan at heart kind of thing outside of one random person in this chat right now. But Matt Ryan, you wanted to see him go. Yeah, there you go, that way. You wanted to see him be able to succeed with the Colts, and I think I was on the same page as you, Dan, saying that I think that they will be able to be a good team this year. They needed a good quarterback. They got somebody I thought was a good quarterback, and he is a good quarterback. But seeing him being able to drive them down the field and get that last-minute touchdown was nice to see. It just kind of brought back good times, those old Matt Ryan touchdown game-winning drives and all that. It felt good to see.
That's all well and good, guys. Matt Ryan, I love him, guys. I know. I'm the only non-Falcons fan here, and I get a lot of crap for it behind the scenes. But hey, I'm confident. We're going to talk about that next, because my team hasn't played yet. It all ends on Monday night. I know. Carrie Underwood, kill me. I just remixed your song. I'm sorry. But with that being said, guys, the one game that I was looking at kind of with Dan, it was the Bills-Dolphins. Great game. Some of the best football I've watched yet this year. But here's the storyline aspect that I was looking at. Has anybody watched the Oakland Raiders? Does anyone realize how much hype we sat through with the Oakland Raiders? And what's their record now? Dan, what is the Oakland Raiders record?
That would be 0-3, Mr. Reno.
0-3. This is the team that got Devontae Adams, guys. Jonathan, what's your take on the Raiders?
Man, I mean, it was a horrible day for the AFC West all in all. You still got the Broncos with their matchup later this evening with San Francisco, but Chargers got boat raced because Herbert's hurt. That dude, I don't know how he's standing and playing football after having that cartilage missing or whatever the heck it is in his rib cage. I don't know. And he looked rough. And then the Chiefs, they lost to the Colts, as you guys just touched on. It has not been good for the Raiders. Not at all. And you got Devontae Adams, you got Darren Waller, Josh Jacobs. You have all the weapons you need on offense. I don't know what it is with the Las Vegas Raiders. Maybe they should have stayed in Oakland because Las Vegas has not been treating them too well. I just don't understand. We've all been hyping up the AFC West in totality, and we've been throwing in Oakland in there. I said last week that I thought Derek Carr was very underrated, and I thought he's a really good quarterback. But, man, the Raiders have not been showing up this season, and they are getting off to a rough start, and that's horrible considering the division that you are in, and you need to stay competitive when you got teams like Kansas City up in the mix as well and the Chargers. Like, man, you can't be falling behind too early or else you're just going to be done, man. You can't hang with them.
Well, the thing that you just listed too, you got to think about all of the. They have so many weapons offensively, right? You talk about Josh Jacobs. They have Derek Carr, who I think is honestly one of the top tier quarterbacks, like top 50% quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm not saying he's one of the elite, like top 5, but he's up there as far as being a good quarterback in the NFL. You have Josh Jacobs, Darren Waller, and Devontae Adams around him, so he's got plenty of people to throw to. Offensively, they had just under 400 yards of total offense and only one a turnover, I believe. And so the issue there is maybe they need to stack up a little bit more defensively. They don't seem to have as much going on that side of the ball that they do on the offensive side to be able to score in these NFL games and then hopefully keep the guys off the board the other way. I mean, it was a close game, 24-22. It's a pretty darn close game.
It was a close game, and we're talking about them being 0-3, but we're talking about them being 0-3 by like 8 points, guys. I mean, it was 19-24. They lost to the Chargers. They lost 29-23 to the Cardinals, and then now they lost 24-22 to the Titans. Also, 3 playoff teams, right? So they've had a very difficult schedule. They've been playing these teams tough. Like Jonathan kind of said, they haven't really shown up. I mean, I can see what you're saying, and you're not 100% wrong, but I think that's strong to say they haven't shown up because they're in the ball games. They're just not winning them. So they've got to start putting it together and getting Adams and Carr on the same page. You missed me with that because they play college ball together. They should be on the same page. They work together all summer. So that's not a thing. But they've got to figure out how – their defense has got to come up with stops, right? We always talk about when these great teams is – in those types of games, I kind of think of them as like an arena football where if you get a stop, you're going to win. And the Charger and the Raiders, they just don't get that stop when they needed to stop. Derek Carr is a good quarterback. He's a very good quarterback. He is a quarterback that you can be successful with. He is not an elite quarterback. He is not your top tier quarterback. So if you're going to expect him to go out there and put people away, that's an unfair expectation because he's not capable of doing that. But he is capable of guiding a really talented team into the playoffs, and I think that's what they're hoping for.
Yeah, I'm not here for the Derek Carr slander just yet. I think, it's new year, new system. I mean, look at the head coaches he's gone through. Went through John Gruden, guys. Absolutely brutal. I mean, I remember when John Gruden got hired, all the talk was about, or most of the talk for a little bit there was whether or not he could win with Derek Carr. What was Derek Carr going to be like? What was his status in Oakland? Jeremiah, you have something to add?
Oh, I was going to wait till you finish, but yeah, I was going to say as far as Derek Carr, just real quick, he had 303 yards passing, 2 touchdowns and 1 interception. He did not have a bad day today, just to be fair.
Absolutely not. And I do see, there is some criticism about him getting the ball to his best playmaker in Devontae Adams, but that's going to come down the stretch. You also got to remember that it is their first year. Like we already said, it's the first year in the system. It's disappointing to say the least because this is supposed to be a playoff team. This is supposed to be a playoff team in the best division in all of football, as we talked about 2 weeks ago. But with that being said, I do have a question for Dan, kind of going back to our Falcons talk. And I know Jonathan, Jeremiah will definitely want to chip in after Dan. So, Dan, we've said on this show, and maybe it was on the Top Dog Talk on our show before, but I believe it was on this show as well. You had some criticism for the Falcons draft this past year. You were kind of let down in the preseason just with the performance of the draft class as a whole. I want to get your take because now Drake London has had a couple good games to start his rookie season. Let's get your take. Is there any change to the way you see this draft class or specifically Drake London?
Well, Drake London had 0 catches for 0 yards today, so I don't think he had a great game. But my frustration with the Falcons is the fact that he didn't go defense. I mean, you can find quality wide receivers in the 2nd and 3rd round. We have seen that through the years and years and years of the draft, and I didn't feel like Drake London was – go ahead.
Drake London had 3 catches for 54 yards.
Well, NFL.
That man helped me hit my player prop bet.
I was
today,
like,
Dan.
you just completely lost me. That's why I started when I talked about the Falcons earlier. I was saying like Drake London looked pretty good today. He had a couple nice
did look
catches and
good.
plays.
Bro,
And
NFL.com
me.
had him down
They
for-
screwed you up, man.
My man's look. This is how we know Dan's old. He's using NFL.com for his in-game stats.
I mean,
who
come on,
uses
buddy.
NFL.com for game stats, brother?
I mean, I'm going to the website of
Yeah,
the
and he had a
league.
touchdown. He had a touchdown today.
Come on, Dan.
All right. Well, anyway,
Tell me
that
you
was-
didn't watch the Falcons game without telling me you didn't watch the Falcons game.
Fake
I
fan,
was
boo.
Hey, listen, I know
Go ahead.
Patterson
Go
had
ahead.
a
Go
touchdown.
ahead.
And I know they targeted Pitts today.
They
Anyway,
did.
Finally.
yeah, my
Yeah.
frustration with the Falcons was not necessarily about Drake London. Was that they didn't go after a defensive player in the first round. I wanted a defensive player in the first round, and I think you're seeing that now with the Falcons. They have weapons on offense. I mean, look at Cordell Patterson. What I really liked about Cordell is that he wanted to be here in the offseason. He made it known that he wanted to come back. He made it known that he would take less to play here because he knew what a situation we were in. And they rewarded him with that by giving him another contract where he could have went somewhere else and got G'd up. He really could have because he had such a good season. Kyle Pitts is a guy that we have, a lot of guys had an issue with taking a tight end at number 4 in the NFL draft. And it's very hard to argue against it. However, he's type of a unicorn, right? He's not to label Kyle Pitts a tight end is unfair. Like Kelsey is a tight end and Kelsey puts up massive numbers. I'll let you go, Harrison. Hold on one second.
I got you.
To label him just a tight end is not fair. So he is a playmaker, and I was a little bit frustrated because we took playmakers in the top, 10 of the draft in back-to-back years, and we didn't do anything to the defense. Go ahead.
Miss me with the Kyle Pitts as a unicorn label. The only man that deserves that in football in general right now is Brock Bowers.
Yep.
That is a
Okay.
unicorn. I
Look,
see you
hold on.
chomping at the bit down there, Jonathan. Go ahead.
Look, I love me some Brock Bowers. I said last week, I don't know how this man continues to amaze us every single week when he touches the ball, because it seems like by now we should just be used to what he does on the football field, and yet he breaks off like a 50-plus yard run, the longest touchdown run by a tight end in like 20-plus years in college football history. But Kyle Pitts is in that conversation as well. That man is different. You can line him up anywhere. The Falcons kind of use him the same way Georgia uses Brock Bowers as well. They use him in the run game as well. He's a guy that you have to get the ball in his hands, and I think he very well is in that conversation as a unicorn. That's not a slight to Brock Bowers, but Kyle Pitts is different.
The other thing that I wanted to talk about, we're going to kind of move away from the Falcons for just 1 second, is have you seen what Peterson's done with Trevor Lawrence? I mean, that experiment they had with Urban Meyer last year was a complete shit show. Excuse my language, but it was terrible. And now they brought in Peterson, bringing in the West Coast offense, getting him in a real NFL offense that has developed a million different NFL quarterbacks. Dude, I was watching first of all, my son watches zero at football, but Brooks asked him to watch a little football today. So guess what he does? Watches football because somebody other than his dad asked him to watch it. We're watching Trevor Lawrence, and we're like, Ken is like, dang, Dad, he's like really good, isn't he? And I'm like, yeah, he really is good. He's like, he didn't look like this last year, though, did he? And I was like, no, he didn't. What Doug Peterson has done with Trevor Lawrence in a short period of time is resurrected his career. And they went on the road today and smashed a quality football team. And I know you guys have something to say about that, too, because you guys were mentioning it a little bit. Were you as shocked as I was that the Jacksonville Jaguars put up 38-10 on the Chargers?
No, absolutely. Definitely shocked to see them go up 38-10 over the Chargers. And also, you're talking about like what he's been able to do with Lawrence this season so far, and it's been impressive. But maybe that's one of those things too that that Lawrence needed a little bit of time in the NFL to get comfortable and to kind of develop a little bit more himself. And maybe Urban Meyer wasn't able to get him to that step. But it also is sometimes so much pressure is put on these young rookie quarterbacks that they need a little bit of time. And he's got a little bit of time, and now he's out here throwing for 262 and 3 touchdowns today and a 38-10 win. It's a great game.
Yeah, and he doesn't need a coach that's going to kick a kicker, guys. We don't need 2 kickers on an NFL team. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Yeah. I was just about to say that. The biggest difference is you don't have Urban Meyer in that locker room anymore. You don't have pictures of surfacing of your head coach hugging up on some women in the bar, man. It's like the publicity around your team is no longer the head coach doing all these horrible things. Now it's about, holy crap, Jacksonville has a good team for once. And they've been waiting on it. They had that year in 2017 when they made it all the way to the AFC Championship, came really close, actually, to making the Super Bowl. And then they fell off a cliff, and now they got Trevor Lawrence, and they got Travis Etienne in there. They got some good playmakers now, and I think that just shows you what the difference can be of a head coach that knows what he's doing, a head coach that cares about his players and his team, versus a head coach that's kind of just all about himself, and he really don't care about his players.
No, I don't think Urban Meyer is the best professional coach, as evidenced by what he did in the NFL. But with that being said, guys, we just spent, great. That was great talking about all these different games. But we got to get back to kind of what we talked about. What's going to be the big story tomorrow morning? The injuries.
Yep.
And there were plenty of them, especially at the quarterback position. I don't know why. We had Trey Lance go down last week with a broken ankle, and we're going to get to another potential ankle injury in a little bit. But Tua Tagovailoa, the quarterback from the Miami Dolphins, gosh, that's still a mouthful. I've been saying that for almost 4 or 5 years
Tua,
now.
baby. Just rock with Tua.
Still saying it wrong.
Why with Tua?
He said he was still saying it wrong.
Still saying it wrong. I'm sorry. In the middle of a very tight, very heavily contested Dolphins-Bills game, Tua goes down with a hard hit and appears to come up slow to get up. He's wobbly when he gets up and ends up falling down. Leaves the game, goes back to the locker room, and then reemerges to start the second half.
That man was smelling colors after he getting the hit. Dude, you saw what happened after the hit. This man is stumbling out like he just spent a whole night downtown Athens, and he's stumbling out of the bars at 12 o'clock at night. That's what he looked like. He could not stand up straight. He wasn't down. He was up in another universe. He had no idea where he was, and I was amazed that they put him back in the game. And there's a reason why the NFLPA is now investigating that situation and investigating the Dolphins concussion protocol, because nobody that was watching that game thought Tua was supposed to be back in that game. And he probably shouldn't have, because I'm telling you, he had no idea where he was. I am shocked that he was able to finish that game knowing where he was like 30 minutes ago.
No, they gave him like those smelling salts, you know what I mean? To like kind of pop his eyes back open, because the dude, like, when I tell you, your analogy was pretty good. My analogy that I was going to win, he looked like, Bambi out there were trying to walk for the first time. He took 2 steps and collapsed. Like, he was not okay. And then the NFL, they came out and said that supposedly he, like, on a quarterback sneak in the first quarter, he tweaked his back. And then when he got shoved down by Matt Milano for the Bills, that it caused, which, by the way, if y'all saw that hit, it really wasn't that hard of a hit. It was a shove, and he kind of laid backwards into it. And so, like, I think the only thing that makes sense is his head hit the ground, and it was just what put him over the edge. But if you cannot tell me that he wasn't struggling with concussion, like, that was not because he tweaked his back earlier. You don't just, like, collapse, at your knees just because of a potential tweaking of your back and then also be able to play later on. If it was your back that bad and to where you're like collapsing, there's no way you also play in the second half. No matter which way you carve it up, he shouldn't have been playing in the second half. And so I do think that there was some type of play or some hit earlier in the game that initiated the issue with the concussion type, setting that he was in. And then that last push really put him over the edge. But no, he definitely did not tweak his back on. That wasn't the issue that he was facing. Absolutely not.
The only other exception or ration that they could have given is that he was extremely dehydrated. Because if you've ever seen a player who's extremely dehydrated, they do look woozy like that. They look like they'll fall out, right? So you could have come with that excuse, and people would have been like, "Oh, okay, so you went at halftime, gave him some fluids, he popped back out and came out like Superman."
Fluids, all right.
They gave him some.
They gave him some fluids, all right.
But my point is that, like, that's like the back. Like, you're right, because I have a bad back, and once your back goes out, you're done, and you can't do anything with a bad back. I mean, you can't fight through back pain. It's not something that you can do. Like, you can have like maybe a small tweak or something like that, and you can make it through it. But if you have
they hit him with a cortisone shot or something.
Right, or something. I don't know. But the way he came out, the NFLPA is going to go after this one. And, to say, well, Tua wanted to go back in the game. We all want to go back in the game. But there has to be somebody to stop us from hurting ourselves.
That's what your coaches and trainers are for. They're supposed to keep you from making stupid decisions. That's what concussion protocol
is in place for, is because you are trying to prevent an athlete from getting in his own way. Because every athlete at that level, I shouldn't say every, because there's exceptions to every rule, but the majority of great athletes are competitors. And what do competitors want to do? They want to play. But hey,
absolutely. And go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I mean, I'll let you hit that, and I got some more, so come back to me later. Go ahead.
And that wasn't the only injury that may cause some controversy, because as we know it, it's not the NFL, it's not football without some injuries. Mac Jones, quarterback of the New England Patriots, right near the end of the Patriots game between the Patriots and Ravens. Ravens were up 11 points at the time, guys. 11 points. And I get it. This is the NFL. This is the National Football League. You're still trying to win, even when the clock says, even when math says you're not going to win. Takes a hit on the very last offensive play for the New England Patriots. And Calais Campbell, you can argue there's going to be some controversy as to whether or not that was late and whether or not it was maybe even rough in the passer, in the sense that he lands full weight on him and lands on his leg. He goes out, he gets up, limps off the field before at the end of the game there's a picture of him being carried into the locker room. We do know now that, according to Ian Rappaport, that the X-rays of his ankle have come back negative after being helped off the field. Dan, I want to go to you first. First off, have you seen the hit? And if so, I mean, is that textbook roughing the passer?
I mean, the way the quarterbacks are protected now is kind of ridiculous, and I hate the Patriots, and I don't give two craps about Mac Jones, so I'm probably not the person to start with this segment, because I don't care that he's hurt. I don't care about him at all. But there were far more egregious hits this week that injured players and took players out of the game. So I'll let you guys talk about Mac Jones. Come back to me, and we'll talk about the other guys that got hurt on way worse shots.
Dan just hit us with the F them kids, bro. F them kids up north. I don't care about them. You got a Patriots uniform on. Do not care about your well-being or anything like that. But I think it does kind of show that, man, you sneeze on a quarterback nowadays, you're getting hit with 15 yards. A flag is being thrown. It's kind of ridiculous to what protecting the quarterback has turned into. But it also shows you it doesn't matter how many rules you implement into your game. It doesn't matter what you do to try and protect these guys. They're going to get hurt. They're going to get hit. So I think maybe it was a little dirty. It's kind of hard to determine that, because it's, so much going on and, forward momentum and things like that. But still, I just think it's kind of it just goes to show, man, even if it is rough in the passer or whatnot, these guys are going to get hurt. And it don't matter how many – you could put thousands of rules protecting these guys. They're going to get hurt, man. And it's not like Mac Jones is this most athletic specimen of the bunch in the NFL either. So he's not going to be evading too much contact. So you better hope that he stays healthy, and you got to protect your boy back there.
Well, here's the thing is I wouldn't call it a dirty play. I definitely wouldn't call it a dirty play, but like you said, based on the way that the rules are written out, it was a late hit on the quarterback. Ball's been thrown, dude takes like 2 steps and then shoves him to the ground. But like when he shoves him, he also lands on him, which is what Harrison was talking about with the full weight and everything like that. My issue necessarily isn't the weight on him, because I'm kind of with you guys and saying, how much are we going to protect him? As football players got to land. Like, what do you want the defensive player to do there? But my issue is it was a little bit of a late hit. Like you said, it was a late in the game, kind of coming to the close of the game, and you see Mac Jones go out like that. And like you said, when he was being carried to the locker room, it wasn't like it was just like he was grimacing. Like he was like screaming in pain, just about like grimacing. His face was like, he was definitely feeling it. So whatever happened, it definitely caused a lot of pain. So I don't care if the MRI or the X-ray may have come back negative on his ankle, but at the same time, they should probably do an MRI, because something might have popped in there, because something was definitely wrong more than a normal. That wasn't just a normal play.
And you're right. And they are going to protect the quarterback, and I was a little callous with my Mac Jones take, but you have to protect the quarterback because you can't run a team without a good quarterback, right? And we saw what happened with Justin Herbert up there with the Chargers. I mean, listen, they got beat 38-10 today. Jacksonville played a good game, but that had more to do with the fact that Herbert couldn't play the way he's capable of playing. He made that one throw from his right to his left about 40 yards downfield. And, man, there's only a handful of guys in the entire NFL that can make that throw. But imagine if he is healthy, it's a much different game. But I have a bigger issue with the shot that my man Higgins took up in Cincinnati. You had 2 DBs closing on him. He goes up, high points the ball. The DB for whoever the heck they were playing today, and I don't know why that escapes me, but whoever they were playing today, the Jets, he launches himself. He launches, okay, and takes the crown of his helmet and hits him right in the face and knocks him the blank out. Gone. 99, Sweet Prince. Like, we hate targeting in college football, right? We don't like it because it's sometimes whatever. But there's no consequence in the NFL. I mean, the guy may or may not get fined or whatever. He got a 15-yard penalty. if I'm a head hunting free safety and all I know is that I can take the best player of the other team out by taking a cheap shot, I'm going to do it all day long because we're going to win the football game. Now, they didn't. The Jets didn't win the football game because they're not a good football team. But Higgins was having a hellacious game. If you go check out the stats on that, look at that touchdown that Higgins made in the corner of the end zone. My God. Oh, my
He
touchdown
God.
hung in
nasty.
the air for like 10 minutes, it seemed like.
Oh, my
It was
God.
nasty. And
Dude
then he
was
toe
having
tapped
a-
with like an inch of like the field left before he was out of bounds.
Ridiculous.
It was insane.
The guy was having a hell of a game, and then a cheap shot takes him out. I have a much bigger issue with crap like that. And then Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver for the Jets, who is a freaking stud, by the way. Now, granted, listen, this was 100% a clean hit. But, man, gets hit right in the ribs, snaps his head back. He's out for the rest of the game. These wide receivers, man, like as much as we protect the quarterback and as much as I am the guy who's like, quit protecting everybody, but these wide receivers take some shots, boys. I don't, and like I have started to notice how vicious and violent these hits are getting at all levels now, even down to the high school level. If you watch some of those from a field level, those hits, these guys are hitting way harder than they ever have in the past. What are your thoughts on some of these shots?
It's the type of hits that what was that old video game called? I think it was NFL Blitz, where like
Blitz,
you hit someone hard, you
would
see the
break
ribs,
their legs and
the ribs
snap 'em.
cracking, and after the play, you could just start wailing on the dude, beating the crap out of him. You had to give him the shot of cortisone on the sidelines. My gosh! Like, could you imagine if that was like implemented in the NFL? Like after that happened, they just cut to one of those scenes. Like, oh, this show would. Oh my gosh, what a game!
Like a hockey
to throw
fight,
it back
all
for
of a
you
sudden
boys
they take
right
their gloves
there, man.
off and start brawling in the middle of the field or something like
right,
that.
Dude.
That'd be something. Good Lord. No, but the hits are pretty bad. And yeah, Higgins was having a good game. He had 5 catches for 93 yards up to that and the touchdown that he had. So it was a huge spot that him going out. Plus, I had him in fantasy. So that kind of killed me in my game as well. So, those little personal reasons for that one. But no, I mean, those hits, I mean, they're part of football. But you're talking about like a targeting thing. They kind of reminded me a lot of that LSU hit. What was it, 2 weeks ago, where he just launched straight at the quarterback's face, and it was kind of like that. It was like, and yeah, there's repercussions of it. They get fined, like you said. He'll probably get a fine or something like that. They used to kind of suspend guys a game or two in the NFL. They don't really do that as much anymore. They kind of fine them and let them go. And if you're wanting to protect, like you said, you protect the quarterback so much, you want to protect these wide receivers a little bit too, because those playmakers, guys like that, they are important to the game as well. You can't have them all being like knocked out for 3 weeks, and then it's going to impact the product that you see on the field if they're getting those type of hits. I'm all for like big hits and stuff, but you got to protect like the long-term, safety of these guys and these headshots. It's just not good. It's not good for the game.
Specifically the cheap shots. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you even see it in, I believe it was the Bills Dolphins game. You saw Emmons across the middle. I don't know if it was a slant, what route he was. He got laid out in that end zone. I mean, the safety just came downhill and just destroyed him in that end zone. Hey, can't let him out. You can't let him in your end zone. Can't let him in your end zone for your defense. But we kind of got to regulate those hits, because if that hit was in college, that safety's out of the game. That's just the difference. NFL, there is no targeting. You get an unnecessary roughness, something like that, and boom, next play, you're still in there. But with that being said, guys, we have games to talk about tonight and Monday night. Thank God to the NFL, guys. Thank God for the NFL. Two more games to close out the weekend. Going first, we're going to start on the bottom right and go left. So it'll be Jeremiah, Jonathan, Dan, and Harrison. And the reason I'm doing this is because Mr. Jeremiah Stoddard actually had a good week of picks last week, guys. So if you're with us, go ahead and drop a like on this video just for that fact that the father did not get faded by the betting gods. So Jonathan, first up, Sunday night game. You have the 49ers -2.5 at the Broncos. Go.
What you just said? See, you just
what
just
the heck? I thought I was going.
You
bro.
said no. You said I was starting. Then you said Jonathan was going. Then you go full screen for me. So now I'm sitting here talking to myself in full screen, just confused. But no. All right. First of all, I went 2-0 on our picks last week, so I'm proud of that. And then I went 2-0 on our Classic City Pick'ems this week as well. So
all right. That's enough of tooting your own horn. Let's get to the picks, buddy.
Anyways,
come on.
I'm just saying. But no, the first game, San Francisco is at Denver, and I think that's a pretty big game. It's a small spread. It's only a 1.5 point spread. But you got Jimmy G is going on the road, which, by the way, let's talk about how Trey Lance, going down last week, and they still have a guy like Jimmy G sitting on their bench ready to go. So they didn't really even lose a starting quarterback just about. So they're almost at full speed. They don't quite have Trey Lance, so it's a different spot there. But they have a starting caliber quarterback to just slide in, which is really nice for him. I think they're going to have a decent chance on the road. But I am going to go ahead and give this one to Denver, just because I think Russell Wilson's got to have a chance. This is his game to really kind of turn things around at Sunday night prime time. You got to go out there and turn things around for this program. He's been out here saying, Denver, let's ride. Well, it's about time to do something. We need to see you. You're 1-1 right now. You can't have a losing record right now. You're supposed to be one of those elite programs. We need to see it.
The betting gods may have not faded the father this weekend, but I sure as heck am. I'm rolling with the 49ers on this one. I like Kyle Shanahan. He calls a good offense over there, and he's got weapons. You got Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, who has 103 receiving yards on the season. I don't care if it's Jimmy Garoppolo starting. I like a good offensive coordinator who knows what he's doing, and Kyle Shanahan is that. So I'm taking the 49ers in this one over the Denver Broncos in Mile High Stadium.
I think taking the 49ers is probably a smart play because Jimmy G has something to prove, right? He lost his job. Did he really deserve to lose his job? I don't know. Did he? Did he not? I'm not 100% sure. I think this game had a lot more marquee ability when they had Trey Lance there because I think people were genuinely excited. I know myself was one of them to see what he had to offer. I think Jimmy G is going to be playing with a chip on his shoulder, and I've never been a big fan of Russell Wilson, just haven't. And, I'm in the minority. I know so many people love him. And the amount of hype that he got going to the Broncos, I don't think he's an elite guy. I just don't think he is. I think if you put Josh Allen on the Broncos, much better player. But I'm going to go with the 49ers. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Russell Wilson is that guy. Just never been a fan. I think Jimmy G's got something to prove.
I'm going with the 49ers here as well, even though that the Broncos have their starting quarterback in Russell Wilson. I haven't been impressed with the Denver Broncos at all so far. You have a offensive-minded head coach who has not been impressive situationally in situational football. He made a lot of questionable decisions. His clock management was abysmal against Seattle. So with that being said, I'm going with probably the better system out of the two. Kyle Shanahan kind of prides himself on the fact, coming from he taught a lot of these guys, Mike McDaniel was the latest one to come from that tree. They believe fully in the bottom of their heart that their system is good enough to beat every single defense in this league. As long as you don't turn over the football, he believes he's going to win. So I'm taking Jimmy G and the 49ers here. And with that being said, because it is America's team, the Dallas Cowboys are on Monday night against the New York Giants. So, Stoddard, what do you got? The Giants are 1-point favorites at home.
I was on the fence before you made that comment, to be honest with you. And with that comment, I'm going to lean to the Giants, and because I don't have America's team. They can't score any points. They're averaging 11.5 points a game and giving up 18 a game. They're not gonna go on the road to play the Giants at MetLife. It's a tough matchup. It is a big rivalry game, and I don't have the confidence in Cooper Rush just yet. He hasn't shown me a lot. I don't think they can score enough to win this game. And I'm not a big fan of Daniel Jones either, but I really, really don't think that you're going to go from 11.5 points to go on the road against the Giants and being able to score enough points to win that game. And they're not America's team, so bump.
Yeah, I got the Giants. And you have the number 28 offense in the league going up. I'm sorry, the 30th offense in the league in the Cowboys going up against the 9th-ranked defense in the league. Listen, to pick Daniel Jones is stupid. I totally get it. But they have the ability to run the football. They're 9th in the league in rushing. That would be the Giants. Actually, get ready. The Cowboys have the 9th-rated defense in the league. They're tied with the Giants. So 2 really good defenses, 2 really bad offenses, but one team can run the ball. The Cowboys, 29th in rushing. I go with the team that can run the football because if you can run the football, you can open up a lot of different things. So I'm going to go with the Giants. I believe the game's in New York, New Jersey. So I'm going with the Giants. Jonathan.
I know we give little brother over here a rough time about his football team and the Dallas Cowboys, but sometimes you got to reconcile your relationships and you got to show some love to the little annoying brother. So I'm going to do it. And I'm not putting my faith in a quarterback who played at Duke. Anybody that played football at Duke, I am not putting my cards in on you. So I'm going to go with Cooper Rush and the Cowboys. I like the tandem of Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. I think you could even make the argument right now that Pollard might be your better option at running back, in my opinion. So I think Dallas still has some while their offense may be kind of static right now, they aren't really going against this powerhouse of an offense with the Giants. You got Saquon Barkley and maybe some other dudes that you've just been waiting on to make some plays in the wide receiver room for the Giants. But I'm rolling with the Cowboys in this one. I'm not saying they're America's team, but that is who I'm picking for this weekend.
Cooper Rush played at Central Michigan, by the way. You're going against
Still
Duke,
better
but
than Duke. Still
Central
better than Duke.
Michigan,
Still
and he was
better than Duke.
undrafted. Come on.
Playing for David Cutcliffe. You
Come
got to
on.
give him some kind of credit for that.
Hey, boys, I
All
just
right.
want to
All
point
right, go
out,
ahead,
y'all may hate him, but Tony Romo went undrafted and pretty
Eastern
damn well.
Illinois.
So with that being said, for the final pick of the night, before I let you go, I got the Cowboys in this game. No surprise. And as Lee Corso would say,
Oh,
give me that jersey,
oh my
baby.
gosh.
Put it
Give me
on.
that jersey.
We're going with my Dallas Cowboys over the Giants. One
Oh my
point
gosh.
on the road. It is a
Oh,
Cowboys
boy.
win. I believe in Cooper Rush.
Harrison,
I believe
Harrison.
I believe in Kellen Moron that he's going to call his second
Kellen
good game
Moron?
of the season.
Oh my gosh.
His
He
name is
was
Moron.
not very good against the Broncos or against the Buccaneers. Bounce
Harrison,
back against the Bengals.
you gotta make a deal with me. If the Cowboys win this weekend,
Uh-oh.
you gotta buy a Cooper Rush jersey. You gotta retire the Dak jersey for the rest of the season. You're rocking with Cooper Rush for the rest of the year.
This man doesn't have
Cooper
the
Rush
money
wins
to
10
buy
games.
a
I will get a
jersey.
Cooper Rush
He's a
jersey.
college
Dude, you
student.
can find some loopholes, Dan. All right, we'll teach you
Kennesaw
our ways.
State.
All right, we know our way around the internet.
Are you funding this? Are you funding it for him? Is that what's
No, I
happening?
ain't funding. I ain't buying Dallas Cowboys gear, but man, he should.
With that being said, guys, you heard the picks here. Will the Stodfather reign supreme? Or will the doctor, Dan, or me, little brother apparently, reign supreme this week?
Yes,
we will
little
find
brother.
out tomorrow night after the Cowboys and the Giants go head to head. With that being said, guys, make sure to like and subscribe on the video. This podcast is available in audio-only platforms over on iTunes, Spotify, and some other places. I don't know all of it because there's too many, thanks to Anchor. With that being said, make sure to follow us all on Twitter in that banner below. Got it from left to right if you're looking from bottom to top. With that being said, guys, I'm Harrison Reno, Dan Kiley, Jonathan Williams, Jeremiah Stoddard. That's going to wrap it up for episode number 5 of the 4Y podcast.